I worked the night shift at a haunted motel in Nova Scotia and I discovered the terrifying secret: I never should have opened that door. Every fiber of my being told me to turn around, to walk away. The chill from the draft made my skin crawl. The usual sounds of creaking floorboards and distant wind howling became an eerie symphony. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. It was just another night at the old motel, the kind with peeling paint and flickering neon signs. I was the night clerk, the only soul awake while the rest of the world slept. Guests drifted in and out, some with whispers of lost time and others with shadows lingering behind their eyes. I'd seen enough to know there were stories buried here, stories that left a bitter taste in the air. The hallway stretched into darkness, the fluorescent lights buzzing above like angry bees. Each step echoed, a reminder that I was not where I wanted to be. The air was heavy. It smelled of mildew, mixed with a hint of something sweet. A sickly sweetness that made my stomach churn. When the wind howled through the cracks, the shadows seemed to dance, twisting and bending in ways that defied logic. Suddenly, I heard it. A soft whisper. My heart raced. "Help me." It was faint yet urgent. I squinted into the darkness. Was it a trick of my tired mind? I was alone here, wasn't I? The muffled sound pulled me closer, down the hallway, toward room 12. My hands trembled on the doorknob. The old brass was cold, ice cold, that I felt a pull, an overwhelming curiosity mixed with a sense of dread. With a deep breath, I twisted the knob and pushed. The door creaked open, revealing a room shrouded in shadow. The air felt different inside, almost electric. I stepped in, just a foot, when I noticed the mirror. It was old and cracked, yet it glimmered strangely. I took another step, and that's when I heard it again, clearer this time. "Help me." The voice was desperate. I glanced around, panic rising. There was no one here. Just the room, a bed, a dusty dresser. I could almost feel the weight of the past pressing down on me. Then, the shadows shifted. It wasn't just the play of light. Something was there, lurking. A figure? I couldn't tell. My mind raced as fear clawed at my chest. I stepped back, heart pounding. The whisper became a wail, high-pitched and piercing. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me. Darkness enveloped me. The air thickened, and I felt a presence. I was not alone. The light flickered wildly, illuminating the edges of a figure. I felt the cold breath on my neck, and with a jolt, I screamed, "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up." Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. My scream echoed off the walls of room 12, swallowed by the hungry darkness. In an instant, the flickering light steadied, revealing a silhouette tall, gaunt, and indistinct hovering just beyond the edge of illumination. I could feel a malevolent energy swirling around me, like a predator stalking its prey, and I was trapped, ensnared in a web of fear. "Help me!" The voice grew more frantic, and the figure began to drift closer. The coldness in the room intensified, wrapping around me like a shroud. My heart hammered against my ribcage, and I reeled backward, frantically searching for a way out. The brass doorknob felt slick and unyielding in my clammy fingers. "Hurt me first." The voice twisted into a low rasp that sent chills down my spine. It was then that I saw it, the mirror, reflecting what lay behind me, a swirling vortex of shadows. But it wasn't just shadows. Faces emerged, twisted in agony, mouths open as if screaming. The room twisted and warped, the walls contracting and expanding as if they were breathing. That I fought against the grip of terror and turned back toward the door, jamming my shoulder against it. "Let me out!" I shouted, desperation spilling from my lips. But the old metal didn't yield. The figure moved with a fluid grace, no longer tethered by the laws of space. It drifted closer still, the air growing heavy with despair. "Join us," it beckoned, its voice like nails on a chalkboard, crawling inside my head. The shadows from the mirror coiled like snakes, slithering out toward me. I stumbled backward, my pulse racing, but that voice clawed at me. It was a hollow despair that rang all too familiar. In that instant, clarity washed over me. The stories I had heard echoed back, whispers from other night clerks, tales of guests who had vanished without a trace, swallowed by the motel itself. This wasn't just a haunted room, it was alive. It fed on fear and despair, drawing in unsuspecting souls like mine. Why? My voice trembled, caught between defiance and terror. "Who are you?" The figure paused, its face shifting in the dim light, a swirling mist of sorrow and rage. I was its voice, cracked like glass, betrayed. And then I felt it, the presence behind me surged, tension tightening around my chest. It pushed against me, an invisible force that brought with it panic and dread. I staggered, struggling to breathe. "Get back!" I screamed, but my defiance went unanswered, swallowed by the thickening shadows. In that moment of chaos, I spotted a glint of silver from the corner of my eye. A small, tarnished key lay half hidden beneath the bed, catching the light just enough to reflect my wild eyes. Maybe, just maybe, it could unlock not only the door but my freedom. With a burst of adrenaline, I lunged for it. The shadows howled in protest, pulling me back, dragging at my feet with icy tendrils. Just as I grasped the key, a howl erupted, reverberating like thunder through the room. No! The room trembled, the very foundation vibrating as if the motel itself was awakening. The figure lunged forward, a wretched look of rage spreading across its misty visage. "You can't leave!" Adrenaline surged one last time as I fought against the oppressive force, wrenching the key from its sanctuary. I fumbled it back into the doorknob as the shadows closed in around me. I glanced back, a heart-wrenching scream lodged in my throat. The figure lunged, and as the key turned, I felt the door tremble beneath my touch. Almost just then the door splintered outward, thrown open by an unseen force, and I stumbled backward, colliding with the floor outside the room. The weight of the shadows clawed at me, the wailing cries of those trapped inside mingling with the cacophony of my own terror. With every ounce of strength, I rolled to my feet, ready to run into the hallway. But as I did, I froze. There, standing in the dark recesses of the hallway, were guests, dozens of them, pale-eyed and gaunt with despair, trapped forever in the motel's grasp. They stared at me, mouths moving in synchronization with one forbidden phrase, "Help us." My blood ran cold, and as the shadows enveloped me again, I understood the true horror. The car that had pulled into the driveway that night wasn't mine. I had only just begun to take their place, adopting a darkness that would never let go. And in the looming echo of desperate voices, one whisper rose above the rest, chilling me to my core. "Welcome home." The corridors stretched endlessly before me, the neon lights flickering eerily in the damp air. The whispers grew louder, enveloping my mind like a fog, casting doubts about my will to flee. I turned back, my instincts screaming to re-enter room 12, but the doorway's threshold seemed to pulse, exuding a dark energy that dared me to cross it again. "Help us," the guests murmured in low, synchronized tones, their faces pale and sunken. I could feel their eyes boring into me, weighty with despair, as if trying to pull me into their void. The flickering lights above cast their haunting shadows, giving life to nightmares that etched themselves into the corners of my memory. "Please help us," a woman begged, her voice trembling like a fragile leaf in the wind. She reached out with trembling fingers, her once beautiful face marred by the passage of torment. I looked deeper and glimpsed the ghost of the person she once was, a vibrant soul twisted and contorted into a silhouette of anguish. "Stay away!" I shouted, raising my hands as if to ward them off. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, every instinct compelled to run, but the walls seemed to close in around me. I could hear the rumble of thunder in the distance, as if nature itself was warning me of the storm inside this hellish motel. "Help us or you will be one of us," they chanted, the words echoing like a bomb in my skull, each syllable a promise of inevitability. I dared to glance over my shoulder at room 12, feeling the pull of the supernatural on my back. If I didn't act quickly, I, too, would lose myself to this unholy place. With uncertainty clawing at my throat, I turned and sprinted away, my feet pounding against the linoleum until I reached the stairs leading to the ground floor. The stairs creaked ominously beneath me, sounding less like wood and more like the lamentations of the forsaken. I stopped at the landing, chest heaving, and took a moment to steady myself. The front desk awaited, bathed in the soft glow of a single overhead bulb. The shadows danced playfully across the walls, whispering sweet nothings that stirred an unsettling familiarity within me. My instincts screamed that the desk held a key, a truth that might unravel the gnawing mystery of my plight. As I approached the desk, a shiver traced its way down my spine. There, beneath a glass dome, lay an old guest book. Its pages curled and yellowed with age, a testament to countless souls who had entered this cursed establishment. My hand trembled as I lifted the dome, revealing the frayed edges of each entry. Names scrawled in frantic strokes, accompanied by dates most of which were too recent to coincide with normalcy. A certain name caught my eye, a chilling weight anchoring my gut. Lila Grayson, 1987. The ink seemed to swirl as I read it, taunting me with the knowledge that she had disappeared without a trace, just like so many others. I flipped through the pages, my heart racing as shadows flitted across the surface, whispering secrets of lost souls. Suddenly, the door swung open with a bone-rattling creak. I spun around, my heart dropping as the figure from room 12 entered, gliding with the eerie silence of the dead. It hadn't followed me, it had stepped through the very fabric of the motel itself, the darkness cloaking it like a second skin. Why do you resist? It rasped, voice curling around my mind like smoke. You are already part of this place. No. I shouted defiantly, clutching the guest book to my chest. My resolve began to waver as it stepped closer, the energy in the room thickening, becoming almost palpable. Am not one of you, help us or be forgotten, it whispered, every word dripping with malice. As I stumbled back, the shadows flickered in response, writhing like constricting snakes, closing in around my legs, pulling me towards the phantom guest altar I had unwittingly stumbled upon. I could feel the weight of dozens of souls pressing down on me, pressing against my will, urging me to submit, to let go. With no other choice, I opened the guest book, scanning the names in desperate pleas. And then, my breath caught. Each entry grew darker, until one page, incomprehensibly pristine, bore my own name inscribed in elegant cursive, the date listing today's date. The realization struck harder than the weight of all the souls around me. I had succumbed to this place, I was as trapped as those who begged for help. The shadows shrieked with delight, tugging on my consciousness, and I felt the fractures beginning to form around my soul, splintering away from the reality I thought I knew. As the figure raised a hand, the shadows poised to engulf me, I felt the world sway violently. The ground beneath me cracked open, revealing a chasm of darkness, deep and unsettling. In a hoarse whisper barely audible above the chaos, the figure said, "Welcome to your eternity," and as I slipped toward the abyss, clinging desperately to hope, the darkness swallowed me whole, and I realized there would be no escape. The void enveloped me, a cold embrace of despair. For a breathless moment, I thought I'd plunged into an endless night, where time and fear were irrelevant. Just as quickly, I felt the ground solidify beneath me, the feeling of falling replaced by an ominous stillness. The echoes of my own screams bounced back at me like mocking laughter. I blinked into the dim light, struggling to gather my senses. I was no longer standing at the front desk but in a narrow hallway lined with faded wallpaper that seemed to pulsate, breathing in time with my pounding heart. The air smelt stale, rich with decay, and the whispers of the lost rose around me like a tide, a haunting melody of despair. Without a clear thought in my mind, I stumbled forward, drawn by a force I couldn't comprehend, my feet dragging me into the depths of the motel as if the building itself were alive and possessed. I recalled Lila Grayson's name from the guest book and felt a compulsion to seek her legacy amongst the other lost souls. I entered an adjoining room with the number 14 hanging askew, the door yawning open, revealing an internal darkness, deeper than the midnight sky. As my foot crossed the threshold, an icy wind swallowed me, sending chills racing through my body. The flickering yellow bulb above swung like a pendulum, revealing glimpses of an overstuffed armchair draped in white sheets, an antique mirror framed in tarnished gold, and the remnants of a half-eaten meal still sitting on a table that I in the corner. A child's drawing adorned the wall, crayon scrawls of stick figures, grotesquely grinning, their eyes dark voids that seemed to follow my every move. My heart raced as memories flooded back, flashes from the days I had spent alone in this very motel, my life intertwining with those who had come before. "Help us," the chant floated from behind me, memories colliding and warping reality. I turned sharply to see shadows emerging from the corners, conjoining to form indistinct shapes, their faces contorted with pain, mouths moving in unison. I staggered backward, back bumping into the armchair. The remnants of Lila's existence echoed in my mind. The fear of never knowing what had happened to her gnawed at my sanity. I was knitting together pieces of hearts turned to anguish, threads of tragic fates woven into the very foundation of the motel. As I pressed forward, drawn deeper into the room, the drawing caught my attention again. Inexplicably, one of the stick figures began to evolve into an unmistakable shape, Lila herself, or what remained of her spirit. Desperation clung to her features, mouth opening as if to speak, but no sound emerged. I stepped closer, my heart pounding in my chest, fingertips grazing the wall. And then her page turned. Beneath the crayon scratches, hidden like a ghost itself, was a sentence abruptly scrawled, "Help me before it's too late." Suddenly, the floor trembled, shaking as if it were a living organism writhing in agony. The shadows writhed eagerly, and I stumbled toward the door, my feet scrambling against the old linoleum. The whispers surged, gaining strength, forming a cacophony of despair that ensnared my mind. "Join us, join us," they chanted, a cruel symphony that struck at my very soul. The door slammed shut before I could escape, a barrier now between me and my liberation. Panic set in, clawing at my throat as I looked back at the fleeting image of Lila, now flickering on and off like a dying bulb. She extended her hand, a silent plea sealing my fate further. "Your time is running out," a voice hissed from behind me, chilling my skin. I spun around only to find the space behind me had morphed grotesquely. Where once the furniture stood in passive surrender, now a grotesque amalgamation of souls twisted into a mass of writhing limbs and contorted faces reached toward me, a desperate form of worship, teetering on the precipice of madness. I backpedaled, my eyes darting between the shadowy figures, and I caught whispers drugging my senses, each word more garbled than the last, like a broken record playing its last tune. "You are next, for the cycle will not end," and then, through the chaos, I felt a cold hand grazing my shoulder, a touch so palpably real yet vastly unnatural. I turned, and before me stood a figure, angular and sharp, with malignant eyes that seemed to consume the very light around. "Welcome to your true self," it whispered, voice harmonizing with the agonizing moans surrounding us. Just as I felt my heart tear itself away from consciousness, the lights overhead burst, casting the room into utter darkness. The only sound was the symphony of wails and the cold, colorful laughter of something ancienne, something that reveled in the despair it created, and then, a final chill slithered down my spine, the whisper that shattered my last tether to hope. "Your eternity begins now." And with those words, the darkness expanded, swallowing everything, leaving behind only a pinprick of light, my last glimpse of reality before I too became just another silent plea absorbing into the walls. The darkness pressed in with an oppressive weight, thickening the air and suffocating any coherent thought. Just when I thought I could no longer feel existence beneath the horror, the pinprick of light shattered, opening a bizarre rift that pulsed with energy, like a heartbeat accentuating the cadence of despair. I was drawn toward this ill-defined portal, unable to resist its siren call, the shadows around me howling with rage. With each hesitant step, the shapes lurked closer, recoiling when I grasped the air beyond the threshold, as if it burned them. Were they trapped by the very fate they sought to impose on me? Or perhaps I was the one now ensnared by the embrace of the motel. The fleeting glimmer grew brighter, revealing sprawling scenes in the void, hazy images distorted like reflections in a funhouse mirror. I caught a glimpse of familiar faces twisted in horror, a montage of former guests frozen in an endless loop of dread and despair each time they checked into room 14. Every face was a hollow echo, a warning that the motel's grasp was inexorable, pulling them into its grasp of darkness. Suddenly, the light blinked out, and I stumbled backward, the ground beneath me shifting once more into that terrible void. Crashing sounds ricocheted off unseen walls, framing a terrible truth: the motel was alive and feeding off the terror it incited. I needed to break free, fumbling for the door. Panic surged as a chorus of whispers wrapped around me, each syllable drenched in premonition. "She waits. She waits for your return." Their words struck deep into my soul, turning my blood to ice. I pressed against the barrier, desperate for escape, but the door had melted into the wall, consuming its metallic structure in an embrace of shadows. High-pitched giggles suddenly erupted from the ceilings, echoing wildly, creating a cacophony that reverberated in my mind, disorienting me. Faces appeared in the wallpaper, little figures with large, round eyes, a mockery of innocence that sent a shiver skittering down my spine. They seemed to beckon, their expressions twisted in diabolical glee, urging me to succumb to the madness consuming the air. "Find her," a voice murmured softly, but the deep resonance echoed across planes of existence. Instinctively, I followed, taking several unsteady steps forward. The darkness unfurled to reveal a long-abandoned hallway, the scent of dampness overwhelming. It was lit by flickering sconces that threw shadows like dancers across the ground, fluid and arching. At the end of the hall stood a door, ominously familiar in its design. "Room 14, I muttered, the realization dawning in horrified clarity. My heart thundered in my chest, each pulse an echo of the torment uttered by the malignant spirits entwined with the walls. As I neared, the door creaked ajar, revealing a sight that nearly sent me to my knees. A blackened room awaited, the very air trembling with unspeakable sorrow, and at its center stood a figure robed in darkness, her face obscured by shadows but exuding an unmistakable aura of dread. Her presence enraptured me, raising all the hairs on my neck. "Lila," I whispered, a prayer laced with fear. The figure turned, placing a cold, fragile hand on the doorframe, and for a fleeting moment, I thought perhaps she had been saved from this torment. But as her lips parted, I saw truth in those abyssal depths, the anguish, the pleading, a testament to a past too horrific to recall. "You shouldn't be here," she uttered, each word dragging behind it a trail of despair. "This place feeds on souls, you must go before it consumes you alive, like it did to me." But before I could respond, the surrounding walls quivered violently. A thunderous roar erupted, shaking the very foundation of the motel, and shadows burst forth around us, multiplying, revealing a legion of ghostly figures, their mouths wide with deranged laughter. Then Lila's face twisted, her body contorting as if being pulled back into the shadows. "Help me!" she screamed, her voice blending with the din of desperation, a haunting psalm that grew into a chilling anthem. Suddenly, I felt a firm grip on my shoulder, icy fingers urging me backward as I watched helplessly. The specter of Lila pulsed and flickered, fading into the darkness, her anguished wails echoing in the expanse around like a death knell. The room began to collapse around me, walls crashing inward, the very fabric of reality fraying. Terror sliced through my core as I turned to flee, but the darkness solidified, forming a wall of interweaved souls reaching out, grasping, begging, clawing for life, their eyes vacant, pleading for understanding. "Join us!" they hissed, the shadows crawling up my legs, rending my will to fight, pulling me down into the abyss. Just as I felt myself slipping into that frayed void, a sharp sensation shot through me, a memory resurrected, vivid and urgent. There was a hidden door to escape somewhere within this labyrinth of horror. A way out still existed. That I pushed against the tide of despair, fighting the encroaching panic that threatened to shroud me completely. But as I turned, I realized my path was shrouded in dark figures staring at me like the grave, their eyes glistening with sinister hunger. And at that moment, a voice whispered in the dark, clear as day, "You can't escape the cycle, you're one of us now." The haunting laughter of the trapped souls faded into silence as the door to the motel slammed shut, leaving me alone in the swirling madness, knowing that tomorrow would bring new guests, and I would never leave. Suddenly, a ripple of movement ghosted over my shoulders, a touch familiar yet devoid of warmth. I turned slowly, heart racing, the dread coiling around me like a snake, and gasped as the figure of Lila began to solidify once more, her eyes wide with unearthly intensity. "You are meant to stay," she shouted, her voice a bone-chilling echo as I stood poised at the precipice of sanity. But before I could register her warning, the shadows erupted, towering over me, and with one last breath, I realized I was on the brink of an eternity filled with horror, and my reflection in the shattered mirror revealed the truth. I was becoming the next trapped soul behind the walls of the motel. Desperation clawed at my throat as I staggered back, the walls of the room pawing at my senses, each breath tinged with the scent of decay that emanated from the spectral rift between reality and this nightmarish world. The specter of Lila loomed near, a whisper of the girl I had once known, now twisted into something else entirely, a grotesque echo of herself, resonating with the haunted fragments of the motel's ensnared past. "Fight, please don't let it take you," she pleaded, her visage flickering like a candle in the wind, the warmth of her presence infused with a chill that paralyzed me. But strangely, my feet felt anchored to the ground, as if the very essence of the motel had become a viscous substance, claiming me within its ghastly embrace. I forced myself to look away from her imploring eyes, shifting towards the encroaching silhouettes, where the gaping darkness writhed and pulsed as if breathing, "Help us." A chorus roared out from the shadows, the sorrowful wails of the guests from years gone by amalgamating into a cacophony that chilled me to the bone. They clawed at the walls, their ethereal forms partially materializing and dissolving in maddening rhythms. An arm stretched out, gray and formless, as if beckoning me to join this gruesome congregation of despair. No. I screamed, scrambling backward, but Lila stepped forward, unyielding. A trembling hand reached through the encroaching shadows, clutching mine with a ghostly touch, so cold I felt it seeping through my skin and grasping my very soul. "That I believed I could protect you," she murmured, her voice slicing through the labyrinthine fog of terror that enveloped us. "But the motel." Her words trailed off, swallowed by the tumult of the shadows that shrieked as if offended by her resistance. "It knows your fears, it thrives on them." I forced a shaky breath, urgency surging through me somewhere in this chaos. That elusive door to escape still flickered like a beacon, and I couldn't allow the weight of the truth to suffocate me. "Lila, how do I escape?" I pressed, dread choking me as the shadows dissected her hazy outline, tearing at her edges like the relentless tide pulling at a stranded vessel. "Find the hidden truth," she implored, her voice sounding strained as she strained against the pull of the encroaching abyss. "You must sever the connection," the shadows shrieked, anger erupting like a dark storm. They converged upon me, slithering like snakes, and I wondered if Lila's warnings held the key to my survival or sealed my fate. Stumbling back, I tried to free myself from her ghostly grip but found comfort in her presence, as if some semblance of humanity still resided within the spectral veil. Then a chuckle chimed through the cacophony, derisive and hollow. "You think you can break free?" It echoed around us, curling into a taunt that sent a ripple of dread down my spine. The malignant energy intensified, the darkness morphing, and for a chilling moment, even Lila faltered, her grip faltering and a glimmer of fear twitching in her once supportive eyes. Then finally, a flicker of a thought sparked. "The hidden door," I repeated, forcing the resolve to pervade my soul as I broke free from her grasp. "Where is it?" I shouted into the rushing tide of shadows, the air thickening with a clamorous roar. They surged toward me, hungry, venomous tendrils seeking to reclaim me, and in the midst of the swelling despair, one figure stepped forward, clothes tattered, face gaunt and shredded from years of torment. It raised a finger, thin like a withered branch, toward the far end of the room, a rotating mirror that had once seemed a tragic reflection. "Seek the truth," Lila echoed, her voice barely a whisper now. With resolve driving my legs, I sprinted toward the mirror, the floor cracking beneath me like the breaking spine of the world. But the shadows roared, a wall of darkness crashing against me, the ghosts erupting into chaos, their torment feeding into a frenzy that threatened to drown me. Just before I reached the mirror, I felt Lila's presence thrumming behind me, urging me onward. That I hurled myself through the glass, the shards erupting like a rain of glittering knives. A world spun into view, a corridor lined with doors, each pulsating with energy, but it was the one at the end that drew me, each heartbeat resonating with everything I had lost. But before I could grasp the handle, piercing laughter erupted once more, echoing hauntingly through the corridor. This is the way of the motel. It sang, as shadows slithered around my ankles. The doors began to rattle violently, some bursting open as faces morphed from behind twisting, slurry visages of agony I recognized too well. Steel grip met with flesh as an unseen force hurled me away from the threshold, slamming me against the opposite wall. Clutching my head, I gasped for breath, the shadows closing in around me with an insatiable hunger, their hands clawing, no. I screamed, images of Lila flashing through my mind, running like a movie reel in tumultuous chaos, yet her face twisted in horror, and then, I saw it, darkness enveloping her completely. That last image ignited fury within me, and as I staggered back into the fray, I bellowed, "You will not take me." Yet even as the shadows shrieked and laughed, I felt a cold darkness creeping beneath my skin, whispering curses that pulled at my consciousness with voracious glee. A deafening silence fell, and I stood engulfed amid shadows that began to swirl, forming into distinct figures who extended their arms toward me, mouths wide in a surreal grin, the final step in the cycle. And then it hit. A chilling pulse echoed inward, like the heartbeat of something ancient and malevolent. The laughter ceased abruptly. In the profound silence that followed, something drew near. Tension hung thick like a curtain, awaiting some unveiling, and at that moment, when the atmosphere grew thick with anticipation, two pairs of spectral eyes, horrific and pleading, locked onto mine, revealing the cruel fate that awaited as time halted at the precipice of chaos behind me. The mirror began to glow, revealing more than just my reflection, for an arm slowly slid through the surface, untouched by the hostile shadows, beckoning me. A tremor raced through me as that pale arm emerged from the mirror, its fingers elongating like a skelter's reach, every joint cracking as if signaling its descent into the malice of this place. Something darker loomed within that reflect-ion, a personification of shadows, calling to me with a promise forged in pain. The eyes that beheld me were not Lila's. They flickered like dying embers, soaked in despair and longing. I willed myself to step back, grappling with the vision that forced itself into my Mindan image of someone I had trusted, now warped by the wretched essence of the motel. "Help me." The voice slipped through my defiance, soft yet riddled with torment, unraveling the threads of my resolve. It was the same voice I had heard earlier, mingled with the chorus of the damned. "Don't leave me again," the spectre threw dead against the mirror's surface, a wave of resistance rippling outward, thinning the glass like the gossamer veil between worlds. Shadows writhed like serpents, coiling tighter, seeking to pull me into their embrace. The laughter echoed once more, a sinister symphony that resonated with my deepest fears, urging me to succumb to the darkness. "Don't listen." Lila's haunted voice resonated in my mind, drowning in the wails of those who had endured an eternity of suffering. "The motel feeds off your heart, your secrets." A weight settled around my heart, an invisible chain that tugged me toward the mirror. The air thickened with shadows, and I understood the person in the glass was a shard of my own heart, a spectre birthed from sorrow and regret. But I would not allow myself to be lured back. If I was to sever this connection, I needed clarity and purpose. With desperation coursing through me, I planted my feet firm against the trembling floor. "No!" I screamed, forcing the darkness back with the fierceness of my will. "I will not become like you." The ghostly hand drew back a fraction, confusion igniting its twisting visage. Then rage ignited in its eyes, raw, scorching, clawing with outrage as it reared back, filling the corridor with a shroud of icy fear. The world around me warped, doors banging violently against their frames as the shadows shrieked into a symphony of chaos. With sudden clarity inspired by the remnants of Lila's resolve, I reached deep within my chest, a hidden truth that pulsed like an erratic heartbeat, buried under layers of anguish. Maybe the answer didn't lie within the shadows but in the light I had yet to embrace. "Lila!" I shouted, bringing her name forth like a talisman against the all-consuming dark. "You never left me. I will fight." Desperately, I charged at the mirror, tears stinging my eyes as another shadow trailed behind me, an artifact of my own buried fear, inching closer from behind, an entity that thrived on regret. Fingers grasped at my ankles, pulling, a cacophony of laughter bubbling up as the air thickened like molasses. Breath hitching in my throat, I thrust my palm against the glass. An electric surge coursed through me, illuminating the darkness as cracks splintered across the surface of the mirror, branching outward like lightning. The specters shrieked in agony, an orchestra of despair clamoring to hold on to the pieces of me they had coveted for so long. Help me. The voice cried, but it had transformed, merging with the shrill chorus that echoed from the shadows. The hand gripped the side of the mirror, straining against the pull as the fissures widened, illuminating the corridor like barriers against the malevolence. The darkness wailed, a tempest of sorrow and fury melding into a singularity of dread, and for a fleeting moment, everything was still. The haunted faces transformed into a blur, fading into the edge of my perception as the mirror throbbed with illumination, a gate held together by fear and will. But just as I thought I could step beyond the brink, I felt a cold tendril wrapping around my wrist, yanking me back, tearing me forcibly from my arc of hope. With a haunting whisper that dripped like venom into my mind, it slithered in, cold and ruthless. "I will never let you go," it hissed, the words infusing my very thoughts with a frantic pulse of despair. As I turned to see whose dark gaze was fixed upon me, breath caught in my throat, my heart pounding against the walls of my chest, for the figure looming just behind the very embodiment of all I had lost was not merely a shadow anymore. It wore the skin of what once was a friend, eyes glinting with malice forged in betrayal. No, I gasped, but my voice faded, overshadowed by the laughter erupting around me, chaotic and infectious, spiraling into screams as the tendrils tightened. And in that moment, in that single glance, I understood I had uncovered the deeper truth, and with it came a revelation so terrifying that it threatened to consume me whole. The face grinned wider than a chasm, filled with a roiling hunger, an expression I recognized all too well as it whispered the one word that shattered the very fiber of my being: welcome home. With the shadows closing in, the laughter streaming around me like a dark tide, the room began to fold in on itself, the mirror glowing with the horrific luminosity of twisted fate. And as terror reigned, the door at the end of the corridor shattered, a thunderous crack echoing through the void, a face emerging from the wreckage, not a friend but another piece to my puzzle. "Run!" it screamed, just before all we knew fell apart. With a final shudder, the ground split beneath my feet, and I plummeted into darkness, the void screaming as sinister tendrils began to draw closer. A throbbing pulse of dread enveloped me as I tumbled into the void, each second stretching into an eternity. The world around me became an endless fall, a suffocating swirl of pitch-black silence that swallowed my screams and soaked them deep into the abyss. It felt as though I was no longer alone in that unyielding dark. Something sinister crawled at the edges of my awareness, whispering forbidden truths that chilled my essence. Suddenly, the void manifested into a milky gray haze, devoid of form but pregnant with heavy, acrid emotions. My heart raced, each beat echoing like a drum, a reckless tempo warning of the darkness approach. I landed with a jolt, crashing against a hard surface that felt both foreign and uninviting. I was in a room, disheveled and dimly lit, but something was off. The air vibrated, charged with an unseen force that prickled at the nape of my neck. That I struggled to my feet, panic clawing at my throat as the sensation of countless eyes watched from the shadows, each gaze steeped in a hunger that turned my veins to ice. "Where am I?" I whispered, the sound barely piercing the quiet thickening the room. The walls shimmered static-like, as if recalling every tortured scream sewn into their fabric. Ghostly whispers diffused through the air, overlapping and intertwining, taunting incomprehensible phrases like a long-forgotten lullaby of the damned. They curled around me, latching onto my fears, echoing names I thought I had buried. Lila, that visceral, haunting melody welcomed me back to my torment. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed the grotesque relics strewn throughout the room, damaged mementos of lives long extinguished. Faded photographs hanging limply from the walls depicted twisted faces captured in abject horror, mirroring the glassy gaze of those I once knew. A chill cascaded down my spine as the residual echoes of despair pulsed through every fiber of my being. That I stumbled across a cracked bedside table, and something glinted beneath the chaos. A rusted key lay half buried among the debris, its once polished surface now marred with rust, reflecting the flickering light like a warning beacon. Something stirred within me, a dreadful compulsion urged me to reach for it. I grasped the key, a jolt of energy coursing through my fingers, intertwining with the creeping darkness that shrouded the room. A low hum of resonance filled the air, and shadows danced along the walls like agitated spirits, each one trying to escape the weight of their own despair. I could feel them, their eyes boring into my very soul, whispering for me to join their lost despair. With the key gripped tightly, I shuffled to a door that loomed at the farthest end of the room, flickering light spilling from beneath it. My heart thundered in my chest. Whatever lay beyond promised revelation of the darkness that had entwined itself with me, but at what cost? I inserted the key into the lock, the metal groaning against the rust, echoing the pain of those trapped within. As I turned the key, unease prickled along my skin. The door swung open on its own, revealing a corridor forged of darkness and shadow stretching infinitely into the unknown. Whispers intensified, swelling into a cacophony that rose and fell like a tide, drawing me further toward an unseen dread that lurked in the recesses of my mind. Stepping inside, the light flickered erratically, unveiling fleeting glimpses of an agitated past. Pictures of unspeakable horrors raced before my eyes, strangled bodies, hollowed-out faces, and twisted silhouettes that seemed to scream silently in their arrested demise. I blinked rapidly, trying to dispel the images, yet they wedged deeper like splinters in my thoughts. "Help me!" A voice, raw with emotion, seeped from the shadows, a ghostly reverberation that sent ripples of dread down my spine. The shadows warped and shifted, forming a figure that danced between realms, beckoning me closer with trembling fingers, pulling at the uncertainty in my heart. "Who are you?" I shouted into the void, a shaky defiance against the rising tide of despair. The figure halted, its haunting face ethereally beautiful yet twisted, a perfect blend of attraction and horror. "I am what was taken from you," it murmured, a spectral blend of sweetness and agony. "Embrace me, and we can uncover the truth. Together, we can be freed." My heart raced with both dread and an unwelcome lure of familiarity. The shadows pressed against me like cold hands trying to peel away my defenses, begging me to surrender to the truth that dripped like venom into the corners of my consciousness. With adrenaline fueling my instincts, I recoiled, stammering as the air grew heavy with desperation. In that moment of weakness, realization slammed into me. His entity was not just an echo of suffering. It was a reflection of my deepest regrets, the very manifestation of all I had lost and could never regain. A door began to materialize at the end of the corridor, shimmering with dark energy, an invitation, yet a foreboding omen. I hesitated, torn between an abyssal curiosity and gut-wrenching fear. "What lies within that door?" I shouted, frail hope mingling with despair. In response, the figure morphed, its face melting into grotesque shapes, transforming into familiar visages, a painful assemblage of the lost, each shattered fragment pleading for release. Their voices merged into one horrified scream, echoing off the oppressive walls, vibrating through the air, crashing over me with chilling fervor. Not waiting for an answer, I turned and fled, propelled by instinct, racing against the rush of fleeting shadows that clawed at my heels, shrieking of abandoned souls. But as I rounded the corner, breathless and terrified, a beam of unholy light erupted behind me, illuminating the corridor and revealing what I had feared, the master figure I recognized all too well lurking upon the threshold of despair. "Welcome back," it echoed mockingly, eyes glimmering with eldritch promise, the promise of the truth behind the darkened door. As the heavy air of unfinished business cloaked us both, suddenly, the corridor twisted and contorted, the walls closing in around me rapidly, and the doorway I had intended to escape through shimmered, becoming a mirage that slipped further from my grasp. A terror beyond comprehension smashed into me, a sudden realization that the shadows were not containment but participants, and they were beckoning me to join. As I skidded to a halt, heart pounding fiercely, the shadows surged forward, their laughter resonating like death knells in my ears, time folding around us, teasing the brink of revelation. And as I stood there, caught between despair and the shattering truth, the whisper drifted through the unfolding Chausan, urgency enveloping the air, twisting the very fabric of my being as time shattered before me. "Will you join us?" In that split second, I stared into the abyss, awaiting the truth that was bound to consume me whole, forced to confront what lay behind the door forever barred from my heart. The shadows receded, and the laughter morphed into dreadful sighs that echoed the pain of those trapped in limbo. I stood frozen, heart thundering in my Ursa, terrified prey before a predator I could neither see nor escape. The corridor twisted around me, each shift rending the fibers of reality, transporting me deeper into a manifestation of my fears. As the oppressive darkness engulfed me, I staggered, instinctively moving back toward the door I had vividly envisioned. But it was gone, absorbed by the walls that now pulsated like a breathing entity. The only passage remaining was a gaping maw of infinite shadow that seemed to whisper my name, coaxing me forward with promises of respite and closure that I swallowed hard, instinct urging me to tread back along the path from which I came. But an icy tendril of fear slithered across my spine, urging me to turn back towards the unknown, a persistent pull, like gravity and dread fused together. My fingers brushed against the wall, slick with despair as if the souls of the dead sought to cling to my flesh. A sudden sound reverberated from the depths of the corridor, a low moan that resonated with unspeakable sorrow, blurring the boundary between the living and the dead. I strained to grasp its origin, but only shadows writhed, twisting the reality around me into a grotesque masquerade. "Help me, you must help me," a voice rasped, drenched in a hopeless yearning that felt achingly familiar. I could almost match it with a face, a ghostly image flickering just beyond my reach. My heart clenched tighter as fear wrestled with the twinge of recognition. Lila. The name slipped involuntarily from my lips, waking buried memories that clawed at my sanity. "Is it really you? Please." The voice intensified, merging its panic with the pulsating walls. "You've got to come closer." Despair ignited within me, forcing my legs into motion as if they were puppets commanded by strings of dread. With each step, the air thickened, charged with an electric energy swirling like a storm. I reached the end of the corridor where an unhinged door stood, its edges fringed with an otherworldly glow that promised release but radiated an impending horror. Drawing courage from the voice, I cradled the handle, the chill numbed my fingers as I twisted it, the door creaking open to reveal a surreal landscape. A grotesque tableau stretched before me, a mirror of the past clashing with reality, a room that brought forth every horror I had tried to flee. Lila stood at the center, ethereal yet battered by the shackles of sorrow, her once vibrant eyes shrouded in shadows. They flickered with recognition and something dark, something I had begged to forget. "Why did you leave me?" she accused, her voice laced with betrayal, a haunting echo that shattered my breath. My existence split. An angry truth clawed at the cavern of doubt within me, trapping me between the warmth of love and the raw chill of regret. No. "I tried to save you." "I save me?" she sneered, contorting into a specter of anger. "You abandoned me." A tremor rippled through me, a bitter wave of guilt washing over the once sacred memories. My heart clenched tighter, those unspoken truths hung in the air like a noose, ready to ensnare my soul. "Join us," a chorus of voices whispered from the shadows, falling in sync with the rhythmic thrum of despair vibrating from the walls. They coiled around my ankles like serpents, pulling me deeper into this nightmare where no escape awaited. I took a step back, panic surging as I looked beyond Lila, my eyes searching for a way out. But the corridor folded further around me, closing ranks, an ambush of spirits demanding I join their pitiful existence. Lila advanced, a hallowed fury shaping her figure, a ghost pushing through a veil of agony. "You think you can escape the darkness? You are intertwined with us, bound by blood and tears." As she reached for me, her fingers stretching like gnarled roots seeking soil, the shadows roared, their voices melding into an unsettling symphony. My world trembled, a chaotic tremor racing through the air, rattling my bones. The closing in of fate. Suddenly, a flicker revealed another door behind Lila, just beyond her grasp, a door pulsating with the cyclical rhythm of desire and despair. I saw it, an escape just beyond the veil of pain. "Don't go!" Lila cried, her plea morphing into a shriek that rattled my very essence, reverberating through time itself. Shadows crawled closer, a crescendo of cold bodies creeping along the walls and floor, tightening the noose of inevitability. I turned and dashed toward the door behind her, propelled by primal instinct, though clarity haunted might would either lead to salvation or deeper torment, but I had to try. With a final glance over my shoulder, I saw her face transform into something monstrous, the purity of her anguish twisted into an expression that was haunting yet beautiful. "Come back!" she howled, a fearsome wail that chased me like the specters themselves. I burst through the door, inhaling a breath of musty air as the darkness clawed at my heels, but as soon as I crossed the threshold, the world around me cracked and peeled away, revealing something far worse than anything I had anticipated. The landscape shifted, twisting into a reflection of the very motel I had known, littered with broken memories and remnants of lives lost, every room an echoing tormented scream that I had returned home, frozen with terror. I knew the truth, this had been my reality all along, and no matter how far I ran, the motel housed more than just my past, it desired my very soul. And in that suffocating moment of anguish, I felt the backlash of the shadows closing in, their laughter resonating with despair, draping around me like a shroud. Just then, a new voice echoed through the remnants of my shattered world, chilling me to the bone, a voice that was familiar yet twisted by malevolence. "Welcome back, friend. We've missed you." As the shadows converged, I realized I wasn't alone, and I had never truly left. The pulsating shadows around me merged into a tapestry of agony, artfully woven with the tortured souls of others who had once moved amongst the living. Their faces were distorted, each mouth a gaping void surrounded by pleading eyes. "Welcome back," a raspy voice echoed, creeping into my mind and wrapping around my heart with cold fingers. I turned, but there was no escaping the onslaught of memories gaining momentum within me, the Motel Me prison. I was trapped in the echo of my former life. I dared a look into one of the rooms as the grasping tendrils pulled me closer. The door swung open to reveal a scene as unsettling as the last, a dimly lit space packed with representations of anguish. It was a chilling museum of despair. Images of past guests appeared on the cracked walls, each arresting moment portraying the very essence of their damnation. Desire and horror warred within me, and I staggered back. "No!" I gasped. "I wouldn't stay here, I couldn't." Yet hope dwindled as I felt the oppressive dark wrap tighter, choking the very breath from my lungs. Then, just beyond the shadows, I saw her, a young woman with fiery red hair, eyes wide with terror. It was Lila. But she wasn't as I remembered. Her features were twisted, monstrous with pain. "You should have helped me," she moaned, her voice echoing my guilt and mingling with the whispers of the damned. "You could have saved me. We could have escaped together." "Lila," but before I could form another word, the air shuddered, and reality blurred, expanding in grotesque ways. Suddenly, the wallpaper peeled back to reveal a glass-like portal that vibrated with energy, exuding malevolence and despair. "Beyond this door lies your only salvation," Lila's ghostly figure implored, yet her expression twisted into malevolence, her eyes widening with malicious glee. Suddenly she wasn't pleading for escape anymore. She turned, a sinister smile creeping across her face. "Or your eternal damnation." Fear plunged within me as tendrils of darkness began to swirl effortlessly around her. She stepped back into shadows merging with her, but Lila wasn't afraid. She beckoned to me now, just as I had witnessed her when first entering the motel. Her hand extended, and I felt a terrible pull from the very depths of my soul. "Don't you see?" she urged, now more a creature of darkness than the girl I once knew. "This is where you belong. You were never meant to leave. You are already one of us." Terror shot through me, a realization puncturing the fog of despair. The faces surrounding us faded into familiarity, pieces of my life that had collided with this malevolent force mingled together as the shadows surged forth. Memories of conversations once held, laughter shared, moments far too precious to taint with the darkness beckoning. No. I shouted desperately, my voice echoing into the void of my own shattered spirit. As laughter swelled taunting, beckoning. The rift between my past and the present widened. The doorway behind me trembled, revealing memories of joy and love that lingered in the hearts of the lost. Each heartbeat echoed louder, it resonated in painful unison with the wails of the trapped. Where once I had wanted to save them, I now felt that same vicious cycle pulling me ever closer into despair. Grappling with my shaken resolve, my heart raced. Was it truly my fate to become yet another lost soul bound by the angry whispers that tore at my sanity? With tremendous force, I surged forward to the glass portal, the scintillant light beckoning me. I could feel it racing against my fingertips, an alluring promise to deliver me from the churning dark. That I was not a prisoner, I was a harbinger of light. With that thought anchoring my conviction, I lunged, hands braced against the glass, and with a forceful shove, I shattered it. A scream erupted from within, an echo of fear that clutched at my very soul as the shadows shrieked around me. In that moment of chaos, an unfamiliar warmth began to break through the ice enveloping me. A distinct calling to escape nipped at my heels. I fell into another dimension, cascading through a tunnel of color and sound, racing forward. Memories of love, grace, and camaraderie rushed past like a vivid stream, washing over my consciousness, but no sooner had I embraced the light than darkness collided with my essence again, an unforgiving force pulling me back to the depths. The presence of Lila loomed in the shadows, fangs of despair whispering sweetly, "It's too late, you cannot escape your own heart." And there it was, the shocking truth I had sought to avoid, I was never free. The curse of the motel had embedded itself deep within me, and even as I stumbled back into the light, the darkness lingered at the edges of my consciousness, a constant reminder of the souls who had already traded freedom for a longing legacy intertwined with dread that I and all that torment. I clawed toward acceptance and redemption, grasping the very truth I was meant to believe. I had become the next doorkeeper of their souls, slowly succumbing to the very essence I yearned to escape. As the world dimmed under the weight of realization, I turned to the shadows that draped the corridor, feasting on the faces etched in pain. "Help us," echoed softly, the eternity of the motel had become my reality. "Welcome home," a chorus of anguished souls murmured, and a chilling laughter erupted around me, vibrating with the macabre madness of the curse, but just before the scream tore itself from my throat, I knew it was inevitable. The darkness didn't linger in the shadows, it dwelled within me,